Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Chin Hao. I'm the president of the San Jose Downtown Resident Association. I'm very proud today to be hosting this neighborhood conversation about housing and homelessness. We're delighted to have two speakers with us, Robert Stromberg of Destination Home and Laura Sandoval of Path San Jose. Laura Sandoval is the regional director of PATH programs and operations in Silicon Valley. In this capacity, she's worked with persons emerging from homelessness in a range of settings, including outreach, safe haven, individual therapy, rapid rehousing, property management, and permanent supportive housing. She's a licensed clinical social worker with over a decade of experience in supportive housing and mental health services. Laura earned her master's degree in social work from California State University, Long Beach, and she has a bachelor's in intercultural studies. Robert Stromberg leads the community engagement for Destination Home, a nonprofit organization working to prevent and homelessness in Santa Clara County and the city of San Jose. He previously founded a local arts organization and worked with marginalized groups struggling for political and human rights in North Korea, Pakistan, Venezuela. Robert comes with an international background. He speaks fluent Spanish and studied religious and international studies at Duke, North Carolina State University.
Well, thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Bob Stromberg, and I'm here with Laura Sandoval from Path San Jose. And we're going to hear some introductions here in a minute. This is something that we put together. With this, not something we've done before. So I've been really excited to sort of have a workshop and discussion with some neighbors together with Laura and with Path. And we're looking forward to speaking with you and getting to know some of you as well over the next, what is it now, 50, 53, 54 minutes. This is our agenda. So I'm going to go first, and then Laura's going to go after that, and we're going to have discussion at the end. We will have some interactive moments before that, and we want to hear from you directly. So while you can put questions in the chat at any moment, we will be having a conversation when we get to the end of the two presentations and have plenty of time to talk about questions that you have and make sure that we're responding to other things that you want to know that we maybe didn't get around to talking to today. I work with Destination Home, and as was introduced, we're working to end and prevent homelessness, not only in San Jose, but throughout the county. And we have a lot of different initiatives, but mine is on community engagement. And so I'm here tonight because we want to be a resource for you in the community to help answer questions about homelessness so that we can have a common understanding of the crisis that we're facing. And it is definitely a crisis. I see it outside my door where I live every single day. And I see it when I walk around downtown as well. And we want to talk about what is the scale of the crisis and what's being done, and what are the proven solutions to end homelessness as well as prevent it. So that's why I'm here, and I wanted to hand it over to Laura and have her introduce herself and let us know why she's here.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks, Elizabeth, too, for the intros. So my name is Laura Sandoval, and I work for PATH, which is a nonprofit serving people who are experiencing homelessness, and I will talk to you a little bit more about my work with PATH later today. I am excited to be here to talk to you because I'm really passionate about the power that having a home can make for somebody's lives and really helping them transform their lives. So I am excited to talk to you about some ways that we've seen lives change when they have been connected to permanent homes, and get to know some of you guys on the call as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. So before we go any further, we actually wanted to hear why some of you are here. So we're not going to have enough time to hear from everybody, but I would love to see if we have some volunteers who might like to introduce themselves. We have some prompts on the screen. So it can be your name, your organization, if you're affiliated with one. If not, that's okay as well. Love to know where you live, what neighborhood and what city, and maybe what you love about your neighborhood. So if there's anybody who'd like to start first, you can simply unmute and go ahead, or you can raise your hand and we can make that happen. It's always best when we're in these conversations that we try to pretend that we're actually in a room together. We are in a community together after all.
I'll go ahead. My name's David Janing, architect, David Janing Architects. We're working with Destination Home and abode services and redevelopment on a 91 units, 100% affordable housing project on East Santa Clara and 24th Street with 50% permanent supportive housing. So I'm always interested in these projects and fully supportive of what both Destination Home and Path are doing. So just happy to be here.
Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us. Who else would like to introduce themselves to this community? Elizabeth, what do you love about your neighborhood?
Well, I absolutely love the diversity of San Jose. I lived in a lot of different places around the world, and I lived in the area ever since college, really, up and down the Bay. So Bay Area is already unusual, right, by national standard. And I think San Jose is the most unique. And like I mentioned, we're doing this redistricting recently. And District 3, for example, I think we absolutely cut 1/3 Hispanic, 1/3 Asian, 1/3 white, and 10% others. So I think we're just in such a unique place where there's no dominant group, and we seem to appreciate and like each other and work together for a common goal.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth. We'd love to hear from some other folks. Also, since we're in this room together, we'd love to see you. If anybody wants to turn your video on, feel free. This is not a panelist only video wall here. Anybody else? All right, no pressure here. Oh, here's, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'll go. My name is Ono Odisho. I currently live in Almaden, so I'm actually kind of at the border of San Jose and unincorporated Santa Clara County. My organization is Common Ground California. It's a group focused on land value capture and using revenue from transit improvements to fund affordable housing. Also focused on social housing. There are some related bills in the state legislature. And I guess what I would say about my neighborhood in South San Jose is that it's incredibly diverse, and I think it is like a wonderful place to like raise a family. And I think the only issue is that there aren't enough opportunities for others to do the same.
Thank you for that. Certainly can identify with that. We have an introduction in the chat from Matt. Thanks so much. We're glad to have you with us as well. Anybody else? Well, we are certainly glad to have everyone else, Sonia, Cassandra, Deborah, Chris, Andrea. I won't name everybody, but we're glad you're here with us today. And we're gonna go ahead and launch in here to the first part of our presentation that will get us to the discussion. I always ask this question about what you love about your neighborhood because it really drives our work. Of course, we want to end homelessness because people are suffering, and we want that suffering to end. And we want to help folks address individual challenges that they have in their life so they can be a more integral part of our community. But what we really want for everybody, including folks who are sleeping outside today, is wonderful, safe, and healthy neighborhoods. We want to live in a nice place. I want to live in a nice place. And that goes for all of us. And really the work that we're doing, that's the goal. And we have to end homelessness for folks as part of how we get there. And so we asked that question to really center us on, we're trying to create a better space for everybody in where we live. This map is an overview of homelessness throughout the county of Santa Clara. These numbers are from the most recent point in time count, it's referred to, or sometimes called the homelessness census. These numbers are pretty old now, actually, because we didn't do this count due to the pandemic more recently. It's going to happen again, actually, pretty soon. They're starting to get organized for that. This was in January of 2019. It's an imperfect count. It's done by experienced service provider, partner, nonprofit organizations in the community, and a lot of volunteers. And they actually walk every street in the entire county and visually count who is experiencing homelessness. So you can imagine the difficulty in doing that accurately. However, it is the best count that we have. We don't have a better estimate or count of the number of folks experiencing homelessness. And I think it's important to see this map to, one, get a sense of the scale. If you're not familiar with these numbers already, 10,000 people is a lot of people to not have a home on any given night in our community. It's hard for me to imagine a gathering of 10,000 people. So I think that's an important takeaway from the map. Another is that we have to recognize that this crisis is regional. And if we do not address it regionally, we won't be able to fix it. I often tell a story about, say my neighborhood decided that we were not going to allow homelessness in our neighborhood. And so we put up a 12-foot wall all the way around our neighborhood. And if we found anybody experiencing homelessness inside that wall, we either threw them over the wall or we moved them into one of our homes. And that's how we fixed homelessness in our neighborhood. That would be maybe great, maybe not throwing people over a wall, but to eliminate homelessness, to end homelessness. But what does that do for the other side of the wall, right? Doesn't help so much. We have to work on this together. We can't work on it in isolation. This is not a problem that is singular to any particular neighborhood or city in our community. And it's really important that we focus on solutions that we can implement together. Here's just a selection of statistics about folks experiencing homelessness. This is from that same census and survey in 2019, but I'm sure holds mostly true today, to sort of dig down into some of the perceptions about who's experiencing homelessness and think about the population in a little bit broader terms, right? Those experiencing homelessness are incredibly diverse, just like all of us with homes are diverse. There's a common misunderstanding that people think that those experiencing homelessness came here from somewhere else. And you can see from this first line that the vast majority of folks experiencing homelessness in Santa Clara County and San Jose as well lived in a home here before experiencing homelessness. So these are our neighbors who had a home and had an experience that caused them to lose that home and are now experiencing homelessness. That's it. No different from the rest of us, other than having had that horrible experience, and in some cases continuing to have that experience. Some of the things that also jump out to me is this sort of 60% lost their home due to eviction or job loss or divorce. This number of percent of children among 10,000 is pretty dramatic. We actually, with partners, just kicked off a end family homelessness campaign because of these numbers. We really want to dive deep and make sure we're doing everything we can. 8% of 10,000 is a lot of children sleeping without a home. And you may be thinking, well, I don't see children when I see homeless people on the street. And you're right, I rarely see children as well, but you can imagine that if you were experiencing homelessness and you had a child, you would probably be keeping them as safe as you possibly could. And that's probably going to mean outside of public view for the most part. The other numbers I'll point to just briefly, because it does kind of indicate the fact that we have some systemic racism problems in our structural causes of homelessness. The percent of Latino and Black among those experiencing homelessness are incredibly high compared to that same percentage of the general population. So 43% of those experiencing homelessness are Latino, whereas 27% of the general population. And for those who are African American in our community, in the general population, the percentage is somewhere between 2 and 3%. And among those experiencing homelessness, it's 19. So basically, if you're Black in Santa Clara County, you're 8 times more likely to experience homelessness than if you're white. Now, that means that our safety net systems are not protecting folks in the way that they should. And if we can correct that disparity, then we will be making those systems more effective for everyone. This slide is really just a reminder because I have a lot of numbers and charts and graphs, and those are important to understanding the issue, but we cannot forget that we're talking about people. This is a mother and a daughter and a little bit of their story, but we're talking about grandmothers and brothers and fathers who are members of our community, who are family members to others who are experiencing homelessness in our community. We shouldn't forget that when we're looking at all the numbers and how to make progress. So what causes homelessness? You know, I feel like in our media discourse and in our public discourse, sometimes that people are really quick to judge and to say what's causing homelessness. But we've identified kind of 4 core root causes that really look up in terms of the cause and effect chain at the structural causes. And I'll focus mostly on the first 2. We talked a little bit about structural racism. We certainly have an underinvestment in our safety net programs, those programs serving the most vulnerable. Welcome, Janice. Glad to have you with us. And we definitely have rising income inequality as well. So those who are making the most money continue to make more, and those who are earning the least amount of money, that money gets less and less, is able to purchase less and less every single year. And we just don't have enough affordable housing. So we have tens of thousands of families in the lowest income brackets who cannot find a place that is affordable for them to rent to live. This puts a little bit of light on the income inequalities and how that has changed over the past 15 years. And you can see how those on the far left and with the lowest incomes, that their incomes have actually dropped in that time period. So if it was hard to live here with a low income in 2000, it's nearly impossible today. This chart speaks to our production of affordable housing. You can see that as you move from left to right, that's from housing that's affordable to lowest income folk all the way up to completely market rate housing. You can see that production numbers go up. So this planned production. For the lowest income affordability housing, we just don't produce it, and there's not a market solution to do it. So that's why we have to focus on it. We have to fundraise for it explicitly from private sources and public sources. We have to get our governments to dedicate a greater percentage of their affordable housing dollars specifically for this lowest income group. And the reason is that that is the group that is most likely to experience homelessness. Those with incomes below $35,000, $40,000 a year for a family of 4 are at greatest risk of experiencing homelessness. And this lack of production basically results in people being rent burdened, or in many cases for those with low incomes, as you see on the far right. ELI means extremely low income. That's the far right group. more than 70% of those families, and that's tens of thousands of families in our community, are paying more than 50% of their income in rent. And I know, and I'm sure you do too, that many of them are paying 70% of their income, 80% of their income, 90% of their income in rent. And so if your income is $2,000 and you pay 90% of that in a month toward rent, which you'd be lucky to do because finding an apartment for $1,900 is not an easy thing to do in San Jose, then you're going to have $200 left for everything else you need to do that month. That's not enough for groceries for a family in San Jose, much less if you have to buy medicine or if you have some kind of accident or somebody in your household loses their job. So you can see very quickly how folks can fall into homelessness just because they've had an accident or a divorce or a separation or some other crisis in their household. How do we fix that? We need more housing that folks can afford. We have a plan in our community. It's called the Community Plan to End Homelessness. Really, I often say that it's not really a plan because it's much more of a framework. The planning needs to be done after the fact with much more specific items, and that's the job of our cities primarily and all of their partners to do so. But the plan does do something that's important for us, this framework, and that is it sets aggressive goals and aggressive targets so we can see, are we actually making progress? Are folks moving from experiencing homelessness into stable housing? And if so, how many? Are we reducing the number of new families that are experiencing homelessness, losing their homes in our community? We want to be measuring those things so that all of us in the system, that's the county, that's the cities, that's Destination Home, that's PATH, that's all of the service providers, so we can see whether we're actually making progress. And the Community Plan to End Homelessness does that for us. It also makes sure that we have shared goals. And this plan has been endorsed by many cities throughout the county already, including the city of San Jose. And that allows us to say that we're on the same page. We know what works, and we're going to do everything in our power to move forward in San Jose or in Santa Clara or wherever you are to help meet those goals. And the most important goal is the production of the new housing that we need to end and prevent homelessness. And I say it's most important because it is proven to do so. It sounds overly simple or like a slogan, but it is true. Housing ends homelessness. If I, Bob, am living outside today, and then Laura helps me find permanent housing tomorrow, then my homelessness has ended. I am no longer experiencing homelessness. I am Bob, the neighbor who lives in an apartment somewhere in San Jose. That is the simple solution to homelessness. The hard part is we don't have nearly enough of that housing. We need extremely low income, affordable housing to prevent homelessness, and we need more permanent supportive housing to end homelessness for folks who are experiencing it already. We're going to see a little bit later on some of the data about the success rate for supportive housing at ending homelessness, which is by far the most effective method, effective work to end homelessness, not only here, but throughout the country and around the world. So what is supportive housing? I've said those two words a couple times. Laura's going to tell us a lot more because they're the experts. They actually are building and managing and providing services in permanent affordable housing, providing these supportive services. And that's all implemented using what's called a housing first approach. And the story behind this is that about 25 years ago now, maybe a little bit more, the standard approach in this country was, okay, Bob, you're experiencing homelessness. You have a physical health problem that you're having trouble dealing with. It prevents you from working. We want you to fix that physical health condition first. And then when you get that fixed, we're going to talk about how we can help you find a place to live. And then somebody thought, well, maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe Bob would have a lot more success at working on his physical health condition if he had a roof over his head and a place where he could eat dinner and have healthy meals, and a place where he could meet with a physical therapist or a doctor to help him address those issues. And that's all that the housing first approach is, that you have to have housing before you are able to address the most difficult challenges, whatever they may be that you're facing. And on this wheel is the beginning of understanding what some of those areas of supportive housing, supportive services are. Some things you might expect to see there, some others you maybe didn't. So helping folks integrate with their community after being isolated for so long, experiencing homelessness and living outside, is just one of the key services that are provided to help people be successful in supportive housing. So not only does it work, but we're also making a lot of progress moving forward with some of this new housing. Not nearly enough, but we are making progress. This slide is about the county's affordable housing bond that was passed in 2016 by the voters of Santa Clara County, almost $1 billion, to help us build deeply affordable and supportive housing. And you can see that 4 years in, there are almost 3,000, I think it's actually above that now, this is from February, new apartment homes that are either finished or in the pipeline moving forward. So it's not a pipe dream. We can do it if we set our mind to it and really do the work to move this forward. This is an interactive map that shows you where supportive housing is throughout our community. We have supportive housing in more than 50 apartment buildings in 10 of our cities in Santa Clara County. And as you can see, we want to make sure that we have supportive housing opportunities throughout the county for people to access. And we're going to need a lot more and in more communities as well. Now, just some examples before I hand off to Laura about what this looks like, right? You've heard me talk about it. This is a supportive housing development in Cupertino, and it is for seniors. So this is permanent housing. This is another one that's obviously a drawing, a rendering, that's coming up soon in San Jose. I believe they will be breaking ground soon. This is called the Emmanuel Sobrado community, I believe, and it is on land that is owned by the Emmanuel Lutheran Church. And so we're really excited to see these kind of collaborations between faith communities and affordable housing developers to both meet the mission of the church, but also meet the needs of our community. We hope to see more of these kind of collaborations in the future. Here's another one that is also for seniors. This is in Gilroy. And this is one that is for families that is coming to Milpitas. Here is another permanent affordable housing that is in downtown San Jose. This is the rendering. And this is the real thing that you also see behind Laura. This is Villas on the Park, which was developed by PATH along with Affirmed Housing, and PATH operates the services there. You'll hear more about that shortly. So just in summary, briefly, we talked about the crisis of homelessness and how it impacts all of us, but of course impacts some more than others. And we also talked about the fact that there is a proven solution to homelessness. And we have to continue to make progress because we have a crisis. And we have a lot more work to do to bring these beautiful buildings that will be assets for our neighborhoods and help make all of our neighborhoods happier and healthier. So what we end with is a question, right? I do community engagement for Destination Home to help us build communities that are ready for new housing. And so one takeaway you can take from this evening is a question for yourself. And that is, are you housing ready? Are you ready for new housing in your neighborhood as well? We all need to be ready so that we can continue to make the progress that we need. This is our initiative, our community engagement initiative, and we would invite you to learn more. I'll also be sharing my email address, of course, so that people can get in touch. We want to be a resource and look forward to hearing from you all. We are going to pause very briefly. That was a lot of information, perhaps. And before we hand it over to Laura, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions. We can maybe take one or two, so we get a little bit of feedback about what you've heard thus far. And then we'll hear from Laura about PATH.
And we have a question that just came in from the chat.
Thank you, Cassandra. Cassandra says that she works at Renaissance Place, which is permanent supportive housing in San Jose, and is saying that it's definitely a benefit having supportive services on site in conjunction with their homes and contributing to their success. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for being here and for your work. I was just at Renaissance Place a couple weeks ago for a meeting. It is a beautiful place. Anybody else have questions? If not, we'll have time at the end as well.
I'll ask a quick question. Do you have a preference out of all these housing options that we have? For example, the converting the rundown hotels into supportive housing or building new housing. You know, there seem to be a lot of options. Do you have a preference?
So that's a great question, Elizabeth. Thank you. I think the way that I would answer that is we have to take advantage of every single opportunity that we have. We do not have a lot of available land. We don't even have a lot of available hotels that are wanting to be sold in order to be converted. The one thing about these hotel conversions that are being discussed a lot right now is that it is a much more efficient way to create permanent housing, and much efficient in two ways. It's more efficient because it's faster, and it's more efficient because in almost every single case, it's cheaper. So we know that converting a hotel to permanent affordable housing is much more cost effective than building from scratch. And the other part of that is that it's an opportunity that comes with a lot of state money, and that state money is offered right now. And there might be more state money in the future, who knows, hope so, but we have to take advantage of that right now in order to make a big dent in homelessness as quickly as possible. That state program is called Project Home Key. And right now, throughout the county of Santa Clara, there are 9 different proposals being pursued by different government agencies. And if all of those 9 are funded by the state and completed, we will have 800 new homes in our community within the course of about 8 or 9 months from now. That's an incredible amount when you think about the 10,000 number of folks who are sleeping outside. 800 is a pretty big dent in that, and we really can't afford to pass up a single one. So I wouldn't say that there's a preference, but when there's an opportunity, what I would say is we really have to jump on it. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So let's hand it over to Laura. I talked for longer than I should have. So hopefully, not hopefully, you should pass it off and hear from somebody else. So Laura from PATH, everybody.
What a great summary though, right? And thank you for highlighting just, how, this challenge is here, right? It's in our community and it's urgent and it's pressing. So great question just about, really encouraging us to think about all of the different kind of solutions that can help to address the need for affordable housing and also help people get access to affordable housing immediately, right? So just a wonderful question. I thank you for it. So PATH, I work for an organization called PATH, and we are just one of many nonprofits that's doing this work. I know we have a few other nonprofits represented in this group. I think I heard Abode, some folks who work with Abode are here. I know Renaissance Place, I think it's Catholic Charities and John Stewart Company. So many other groups are doing such important work in this, and we're so delighted to call them partners in this effort. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our piece in trying to support the cause of increasing affordable housing in the community. So our organization's mission is to end homelessness for individuals, families, and communities. And we started as a small nonprofit in Southern California, really just trying to connect with people, provide some basic resources. And from the conversations that we were having with people experiencing homelessness, our eyes were really opened about how systemic the challenge can be and how widespread it is, and how there need to be a range of opportunities for people to connect to affordable housing. So over the last 40 years, we've really expanded the types of supportive services that we offer. So we offer outreach services where we have teams of outreach providers who actually go into the encampments and go into the parks and go under the bridges and connect with people who are currently unsheltered and bring services to them. We also have interim housing options. So these are safe places for people to be able to stay and have a safe shelter for the night, but also be wrapped around with intensive supportive services, case management, employment support, benefits assistance, housing assistance, a team of providers that are all there with the singular goal to help support people transition into permanent housing as quickly as possible. And then the final intervention that I want to talk about is that, from these conversations, we just learned how important access to affordable housing is. How if people can't afford to be able to pay their rent and also feed their families and also pay their expenses to get to and from work, people get put into really tough positions where they have to make choices about where their priorities are. And people can be at risk of falling behind on a mortgage payment, falling behind on a rent payment, and it could, propel this experience of homelessness. So we decided that we wanted to support the efforts to increase the available affordable housing stock. So back in 2007, we created a second company called Path Ventures. This is our real estate development arm of Path, and we build affordable housing communities. This is a map of our communities across the state. We're actually in 141 different cities right now, whether that's offering outreach services, interim housing, permanent supportive housing. We are between Sacramento and San Diego, we're actually serving about 25% of the state's population of people who are experiencing homelessness. And since about 2013, which is when we really started collecting our gathering our data and evaluating how effective we've been doing as an organization, we found that we had supported 12,000 people in getting connected to permanent housing. And we have developed about 1,500 affordable housing units in supportive housing and affordable housing communities across the state. We have another about 670 units in construction right now. And as we were reviewing this data in about 2020, we thought, this isn't enough. The need continues to be urgent. The need continues to be pressing. We continue to hear stories of more and more people who've experienced generational poverty, are experiencing the trauma of homelessness. We really want to ramp up our efforts. So we actually created a 3-year strategic plan that started in 2020, where we want to see 6,000 people move into permanent housing over those 3 years. We want to support that effort. We want to build another 1,000 units of affordable homes, and we want to serve another 75,000 people in intensive case management supportive services, helping them stabilize over those 3 years. These units that we've got in the pipeline are a piece of the puzzle, and we're hoping that we can continue to ramp up those affordable housing opportunities as quickly as possible. So in this slide, you see, this is a little bit about our regional efforts. So last fiscal year, we actually served about 600 people. And of those 600 people, about 200 of them were people who'd already been connected to permanent housing, and our case management teams were providing supportive services to help them stabilize in their new home, get connected to benefits and healthcare and other supportive services. And then we also helped another 65 people make it into permanent homes anew. A success that we're really excited to celebrate as an organization is that when we are helping people get connected to permanent housing, they're staying housed, they're maintaining their homes, they're paying their rent, they're thriving in their new communities. So across our programs, we celebrate 90% retention. What I think is really interesting is that when we actually just isolate our site-based housing programs, so like our supportive housing programs that we offer at Villas at the Park, for example, we actually see that success rate jumps through the roof. So for our first year at Villas on the Park, we actually celebrated 99% housing retention. And we really connect that to the fact that our on-site service presence is there right with people as they're getting adjusted to their new community. So we see people as they're walking to and from their homes and can say hi and build a natural supportive relationship. We can provide on-site supportive services to people to remove the barriers for people being able to get connected to services. We think these things, together with really strong partnerships with our property management partners and community partners, have really helped us to support people in thriving in communities that we're developing. So on the next slide, I wanted to spend just a few minutes also doing something very similar to what Bob did, and that's just show what some of our supportive housing communities look like, because they all look a little different across the state. So the first example I wanted to share is of our NoHo Senior Villas. This is a community in northern Los Angeles, in Hollywood, actually, and we're serving older adults in this community. It's about a 49 unit mixed use of supportive housing and affordable housing community. We were able to kind of cater the design to look a little bit more like the neighboring buildings. And then on the next slide, you can see a very different look. And the next site is Long Beach and 21st. So Long Beach is a community in South LA County. Very different design, but very informed by the neighborhood and also by our residents. We love to get our resident feedback about what they'd like to see in the building. And if you can see it in the bottom corner, we actually have a shuffleboard court on our roof. This was created by feedback from our residents in the community that they really enjoyed shuffleboard and wanted a place that they can play with each other, with their new neighbors on the roof looking out over Long Beach. So just a little fun design comment there. And this site is also mixed use of affordable and permanent supportive housing community. And then real quick, Villas in the Park, you've seen this a couple of times tonight. This was our first development that we have completed in San Jose. We're very honored to work with some really great design teams who've helped create a home that we really think people are proud of, that people enjoy coming to at the end of the day. And it's just a beautiful community. This particular building actually won the Multifamily Pillars of the Industry Award for the best affordable housing community up to 100 units. We were also, for this particular community, our design team was a finalist for the Jack Kemp Excellence in Affordable Housing and Workplace Design Awards as well. So our hope is that we keep growing, we keep doing better, we get input from our residents, from the community, and we continue to build just beautiful homes that people feel is a safe place for them to be able to recover from the traumas of homelessness and poverty. So on the next slide, when we build homes, the outside is important, but equally, if not more important, the inside is really important, right? So we have taken to regularly committing to some common community amenities, which are listed here. You can see a couple photos of what these look like at our Villas on the Park site. But these become really important for the success of our programs and our service teams and our residents. So these spaces are not only useful, functional places so that our residents can say, check out a computer and do job search or resume development, but they also become spaces that our residents get to become familiar with their new neighbor spaces, that they can build supportive relationships with each other. And then it also becomes spaces that our services teams can frequent and also build the same connections with our residents. Our supportive relationships become really organic because of this natural connection that we're able to build with residents by working in places where they often play and frequent. So on the next slide, I have just a quick comment on the variety of our services team. We do a lot of things in our services team. I listed just a couple of the variety of the specialties that our teams offer. We offer case management services out of the communities that we work in. Sometimes we offer clinical case management services. So people with a master's degree with specialty in mental health and in mental health training. We also staff harm reduction specialists. So this is frequently people who have specialist training in substance use and people who are skilled in modalities to help people to be able to make really critical healthcare decisions for themselves. We also hire peer support specialists, become a really important voice of people who've lived through homelessness. Becomes a really unique way for our staff and residents to connect with each other through that common experience and build hope. We also have activities coordinators. So these are staff who are specifically designed. Their whole role is to create a fun and supportive community in our buildings. We also have employment specialists who are networking in the community to try and get job leads and then connect our residents to those leads so that they can increase their income through gainful employment and living wage jobs. So on the next slide, I wanted to quickly just touch on what some of those what our services teams can do in those community spaces that we design. So we offer a range of really exciting services. So the first one I wanted to highlight is medical care, particularly when we are working with vulnerable populations that have experienced homelessness in the past. We find that people might have not had the chance to get to a medical provider in a long time, that they may have been underconnected to the right type of medical and healthcare support. So in communities like here at Villas in the Park, we actually secure partnerships with VHHP where their Hope Clinic can actually come on site and deliver site-based services to our residents that are living here, eliminating the barriers for people to be able to access timely healthcare. We also have wellness groups and activities. Actually, on the last slide, one other thing I just want to highlight real quick because it's so important is that when people move into new homes, sometimes food scarcity is a real problem. You know, people now are getting used to paying rent. They might still have really limited resources. So we have partnered with communities or organizations like Second Harvest who bring affordable and free food on site so that we can help our residents overcome that barrier to that question, how am I going to access nutritious food for myself? So we really try to have, we use our kitchens to become spaces that people can learn healthy cooking recipes on site, but also share their expertise and knowledge with each other as well. I have learned some of my best recipes from attending some of those cooking classes where our residents have taught me a thing or two. And then we also offer wellness groups and activities. So those spaces like the community rooms or our outdoor patios become spaces, especially during the pandemic, that we can safely congregate outdoors, facilitate workshops where people can practice coping skills with each other, get connected to recovery classes and art therapy workshops. And then the last thing I'll say is just because we are a community in a building that's within a community at large, we also love to get our residents connected to the community outside. So you'll often see our activities coordinator going on walks down to the coffee shop with our residents where they might grab coffee, or going to the farmers market together. Some of our communities across the state have also decided that they want to welcome their neighbors into their homes. So for example, at the North Hollywood site that I had shown before, we had a lot of artists in that building and they wanted to really highlight their art. So they created a block-wide art walk where they invited their friends and their families in their neighborhood to celebrate some of their connection to each other and their connection to art with each other. So we love to get creative and make sure that we're supporting our residents' connection to their neighborhood at large. And now I've been talking for a really long time. So I want to make sure we have enough time to have a dialogue with everybody and answer any questions that might have come up.
So we have a couple here in the chat. I might start with one there, but we do encourage folks that you can raise your hand and we can call on you, or you can just unmute after we finish with this one. So I appreciate a couple questions from Deborah. This one I think might be for Laura. Let's see. What makes these housing options affordable and accessible to a homeless individual? How does a homeless person get connected to these options? And what is the process for selecting residents? So that's a lot of questions. We'll see what you can do with that, Laura.
That's such a great question. And I'm going to start by talking about a system, and then I will answer that question. So a couple of years ago, HUD really encouraged every continuum of care to create a process to be able to refer people who are experiencing homelessness to an appropriate level of housing support. So the way that people could get triaged was by filling out this vulnerability index, this assessment tool, where it evaluated people's history of homelessness, their history of experiencing domestic violence, having health conditions, mental health conditions, substance use vulnerabilities. And based off of how many vulnerabilities people have, they get referred to a specific type of program. So if you have few vulnerabilities, maybe you're situationally homeless, you lost your job, you might get connected to like a one-time rental assistance support, quick infusion of cash, help you get on your way, get out of the homeless system as quickly as possible. Now, on the other end, if you have a lot of vulnerabilities, if you're checking off all of the checkbox questions of healthcare, mental health care, substance use care, domestic violence, chronic homelessness, if you have a lot of vulnerabilities, supportive housing is the best housing intervention for you, because not only are you connected to an affordable home where you can, for example, get a rental subsidy where you're paying maybe 30% of your income towards that home. In addition to that, you get the wraparound supportive services that are offered by teams like PATH. So to go back to the question, how does a homeless person get connected to these options? The best way to get connected to supportive housing is to get connected to an outreach provider, a social worker who can complete this assessment and help you get triaged to the right level of care. And if you have all of those really intense vulnerabilities, you'll likely be referred to a permanent supportive housing solution. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Bob.
No, I don't really. I think that was a great answer. It's, I put a link in the chat that has a little bit of an explainer about our homelessness system of care. It is pretty deep in terms of figuring all this stuff out. So I know that many people are not familiar with many of the pieces. So if there are follow-up questions, please do feel free to ask. And if you want to follow up with us after this, I'd be happy to help you navigate and learn a little bit more. I think getting to know these pieces is really important to knowing how to get involved and help support proven solutions. Here's a question from Mac. Are low-income housing interiors designed differently than standard apartments? For example, less parking, more overhead storage, washable floor area for bicycles, larger sinks, more soundproofing. What do you want to say about, Laura? Are interiors of villas designed differently than a regular in any other apartment building?
I'm not sure if I would say differently than another apartment building, but I do think the work that the partnerships that we have with design teams are really intentional to meet the needs of the folks that we're serving. So for example, some of our communities specialize in serving older adults. So our design teams might flag, hey, you might really want to invest in your community room chairs should have arms, so it's easier for people to get up from a seated position. And they might make recommendations that if we expect having a lot of people with mobile disabilities or disabling conditions, we might want to think about having, I can't think of the word of it, but you know, at your front gate, when you have the button that'll open the gate for you, so the ease of getting in without having to hold open the gate, they'll make recommendations like that. So we do have a lot of really informed design teams that help us make sure that we're making decisions that are going to best meet the needs of our target population.
Thank you for that, Laura. I mean, the other way to answer that question, which is not as detailed as what Laura gave us, is probably just to say no. It's an apartment building, and yeah, there's things that are maybe better and like more specific, but it's an apartment building. You know, like you have the same kind of floors and ceiling and sink and bathroom, and that I would have I have in my apartment right now. Here's a great question that is a little bit different direction, but also important for people to know. What is the contact information for getting connected to a PATH outreach person? So if I run into somebody, Laura, who lives outside on my street, how do I help Laura get connected?
I'm going to put the phone number for our helpline in the chat. Now, we serve part of San Jose, and then Home First serves the other part of San Jose. But I would just say call our helpline, and if it's not our service area, we're going to help you get connected with Home First.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. Here's a question.
I have a question here.
Yes,
Robert.
please go right ahead.
Laura, remember when we had that conversation, you said there are several ways of kind of getting plugged into the system, right? It could be outreach by PATH, and there are also some county services that can also refer people into the system.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who can get trained in this vulnerability index that I had mentioned before. A lot of people that are housing providers or serving people who are experiencing homelessness are connected to that. So for example, I know Abode is also trained in this. I know that the city and county workers are also trained in this. It's really designed to be like a no wrong door approach, right? So if somebody is experiencing homelessness and seeking care, they should be able to access that service through whichever provider that they connect to.
Okay, is there like one place where we can get a list of such kind of connectors?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop one more number in the chat. It's actually the city's homeless concern line, and they can help triage. But really, we all try to offer a no wrong door approach, right? So if somebody is not in our service area, we'll help make that connection. But I'll also drop the city's number because they can do the same thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to find a link. There is a page on the county website that lists all of the organizations that participate. But the short answer is, I mean, for downtown, right, you have PATH, who's very active. You also have Sacred Heart Community Service, which is not far from downtown, which is definitely conducting these surveys with folks who are experiencing homelessness or also at risk of homelessness on a regular basis to help make sure they get plugged into the right resources that are available. Basically any social service agency in the community, almost all of them are part of this system. And if they're not, they certainly will know who to send you to. I'll make sure that I can't find that link right this second, but there is a page that lists all the organizations. It's a little overwhelming because it's a very long list, But I would start with like, what is the organization that you know in your community, and they will be able to direct you. And so you have one right here who's a perfect place to start with. The other link I put in the chat I did put in the chat is a response to a question from Janice. No, not from Janice. Yes, from Janice, which is, can we get an overview of the population in Santa Clara County in terms of demographics? So men, women, children. We did some of that at the beginning of the presentation, but only a few excerpts. And the link I put was for the complete Santa Clara County homeless census and survey. There's also a website page on the City of San Jose website with this homeless census. And you can probably search it easily if you don't copy the link and remember it. But that has much more detailed information about the population. Again, it's not 100% accurate. It was done by a survey and volunteers, and now more than 2 years ago. But it is the best data that we have. The follow-up to that was, what was the impact of the pandemic on the homeless population? And I would say, in terms of numbers, we don't really know, because there hasn't been a complete homeless census. We are going to have one soon. I'm not sure if it's a month or 3 months away when that will probably take place. So we'll have some comparative numbers soon to know. We do know that lots and lots of families were suffering from economic impacts from the pandemic and much more likely to be at risk of homelessness. And we did just come to the end in some cases of the eviction moratoria that were protecting people. I think there's still a local one here, but there are more and more people who are going to be at risk of losing their homes. So that is a real risk that we may see impacts in terms of folks experiencing homelessness in our community. I'll also say, however, that our community really doubled down because of the pandemic and was able to do some phenomenal things in terms of our response to homelessness. For example, just one data point, the number of temporary beds, so that's a shelter or interim housing, that were created during the pandemic actually doubled our capacity in terms of those. That's not permanent housing that ends homelessness, but it is immediate help for folks and where they can be while they wait for permanent housing to be available. So some of the system response actually increased during the pandemic. But I don't think we'll know the full impact of that for some time. What else here? We are coming up on our time. I don't want to go over. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, I saw there was a follow-up question in the chat. I just wanted to respond to real quick. That the phone number that I put for PATH is an unmanned number, just to make sure folks know. It's a Google Voice number. So if you leave a message there, we have staff that review the messages every day and then give the leads of homeless concerns for follow-up the following morning when our outreach teams are deployed back into the field. So just to make sure that everybody knows, that's intended to be a message line. It's also a good place that people can text if they only have access to text messaging on that number. And to the second question, I think this is kind of a good plug to the content that Bob was sharing with us earlier. Is actively housing people on hold right now? No, it's not. You know, we're continuing to do that intensive case management services with folks out in the field that we're engaging with. We did just do an evaluation of our outreach team's work, providing supportive services to people in the downtown area specifically. And we actually found that about 2/3 of the people that we're serving downtown qualify for the supportive housing options. So their vulnerabilities are so compounded and so complex that they actually would qualify for some of these higher interventions that we talked about with affordable housing and wraparound services today. But then the challenge is, if those units are taken, they have to wait for an opportunity to become available to them, or in the meantime, try to work on increasing their income to expand their available housing options. So access to affordable housing is still a critical need for our outreach teams as they're serving people in the field.
Thanks, Laura. Here's another question from Max. Says, are Santa Clara County folks experiencing homelessness mostly in urban areas, or some also living out in more rural areas or in mountains outside the cities. I can take that, or Laura, if you'd like to, up to you.
Go for it. I was just going to confess our outreach teams are primarily in downtown San Jose, so I don't feel like I might have the most up-to-date information that Bob might have.
Right, and that is because that's where you have a contract to do that work, is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in general, homelessness is seen just about everywhere in our community. Now, of course, there are going to be some streets where it's not as visible as it is on others. But as I went over in the beginning, right, this is not something that is only impacting certain parts of our city. This is not something that's only impacting downtown in San Jose, right? Homelessness is an issue all across our county, and we really have to move on solutions all throughout. Here's another question from Janice. Encampments and RVs, what do you recommend to us? What do you recommend that we do as citizens? So I'm not sure I understand completely, Janice. I assume that you're asking what we recommend in terms of those types of interventions, in terms of managed encampments or safe parking sites.
Right.
And so I'll take a stab at that from our side. I would first say that the solution to homelessness is homes, and it's permanent affordable housing where folks can end homelessness. An encampment, managed or not, is not a solution to homelessness. Safe parking is not a solution to homelessness. There are interim measures that can be taken that are both increase the safety and health of people experiencing homelessness, and also increase the safety and health of our neighborhoods for all of us. And I think there are a number of options to get there. I do know that several of our cities throughout the county have moved forward with safe parking programs. There are a lot of people sleeping in their cars in our community. And I think that we probably do need, not probably, we definitely need more interim solutions, including safe parking, to help folks who are sleeping in their cars and sleeping outside. But we cannot, that is not going to end homelessness for us if we're not also moving forward much more aggressively with permanent solutions, with actual permanent affordable housing that will end homelessness. So I don't know if there's anything else to add on that, Laura, or let's see if there's other questions here.
Beautifully responded to.
Yeah, so this is a good question, a little bit from Deborah. It's a difficult one, but I think points us in an important direction. So her question is basically that it's really overwhelming and confusing in terms of accessing services and being referred from one place to the other. And I know that that's true. We're not a direct service agency, but people will often call us because we work on homelessness, and then it's on me or one of my colleagues to try to figure out how does the referral system work, and we struggle and stumble through it to try to figure it out. And we're close to it every single day, much less if you're living outside and you don't have a consistent phone line or you don't have a way to look up anybody. I mean, lots of barriers to be able to get there. There are improvements that our system of care can make, for sure. I know that there's going to be a new kind of single phone line rolling out, I think, in a couple of months. That may be something that helps improve the referral system. But the fact of the matter is, we do not have enough resources to provide services for everyone who needs it. So everyone who is providing services to folks who are in need, who are experiencing homelessness, all the organizations are underfunded and overstressed, and they can't do enough. They're trying to do as much as they can, but we have to do better as organizations in the system. But we also have to do better as a society at recognizing that the level of services that we're paying for, that we're prioritizing, is not sufficient. The sad truths of this work. We're a little bit over. I don't want to keep us too long. What do you say, Elizabeth? How are we doing? We want to wrap it up? We want to see if we have a few more? Up to you.
Hi, I think we have one more question from Deborah. How does one contact the Office of Supported Housing right now? Then we'll probably one more after that, then I think our time will be up.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. So the Office of Supportive Housing is open. I was at a meeting at the Office of Supportive Housing this morning. I'm not sure if there's a particular office building that might be closed, right? I don't know, but I'm sure that there is a phone number on this website that I just shared. I did find the list of all the participating agencies, for example. But in most cases, it's going to be best, as my understanding, and Laura can correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be best to go through a participating agency rather than directly to the Office of Supportive Housing. And with that participating agency, the thing that is, this is super difficult, but the challenge is identify someone in that agency who is familiar with your case and your situation, knows what kind of help you need, what you've received before, can help you figure out what resources you're eligible for, and then bother that person. Stay close to them, keep asking until you get referred to the services that you need. That is not a nice answer. It is not an easy thing, but it is the reality of our system of care to a certain extent. We have to end on that really difficult note, Elizabeth. Laura, this is no good. Thank you all.
Laura, do you have a more uplifting answer?
Maybe not a more uplifting answer, but I do think that, to start on the down note, Bob said it earlier, right? The resources are few and the need is many, right? And I think, getting connected to somebody who people trust, that they feel like they have a relationship with, we're trying to, with this coordinated assessment tool, we're really trying to get to a place that if somebody has a strong relationship with that person, that they can go back to that person, that they can ask for updates, that they can give updates, that they can continue to work on a range of goals for health and housing and quality of life together during that time. So people don't need to worry about necessarily needing to do this piece at OSH and this piece at PATH and this piece at Home First and this piece at Catholic Charities and this piece at Sacred Heart, right? If they have one person who they're connected to and receiving services, the best thing they can do is maintain that relationship while that case manager tries to navigate this complex system in tandem and in relationship with that individual. I don't know if that's uplifting or not.
No, I think you two have been wonderful in providing all the resources. I know there can be a lot more questions because it's just such a complicated issue, problem, and complicated system that we have in place to respond. But I'm afraid we'll have to end now. For this recording and the slides will be made available at our website, www.sjdra.org. And if you need any particular information or a copy of the chat, you can also write to me at info@sjdra.com. And we'll look forward to it. And you also have Bob and Laura's email, right? Did you put in the chat? Or I can, if you don't mind, I can put it on Facebook as part of our blog. So that way, I'm sure everyone in the audience would like to keep in touch with you. Thank you for sharing your time, and thank you for a wonderful interactive audience. And we hope to have you back sometime in the future when the situation improves, or if it doesn't, tell us how this. So thank you very much. We'll close.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so
Laura.
much for putting this together and for chatting with us. It was an honor. Hope to stay connected.
See you soon.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.